Hi, and welcome to Immersive Spirit's third podcast. And this one is going to be on the topic of religion versus spirituality, or religion and spirituality, or religion or spirituality. Anyway, I'm Natalie,
I'm Stephanie.
and we welcome you to join us in listening to this topic today. So, right off the top, Steph, why
Yeah.
don't you tell me about development of your religion, your personal religion? How'd you get to where you are today?
Mm. Well, as sisters, we grew up and mom she liked going to church and we were baptized Lutheran. That's how we grew up, went to church. Every summer went back to our grandmother's house. I wasn't near as active in the religious side of it as you were. But I did do Awanas. We never missed a Sunday church. Always was a big believer in God because it was taught and it was programmed, right? And that was just kind of where we were. And so it's like, all right, you are going to do this and you will be this person, and this is where you're expected to go. For me, the spiritual part of it really came in when you and I moved out and had our place after college. And it was like, oh, well, you're doing what? And you had already gone this path and explored Wicca and done some other things. And I was like, what are you doing? And, at first I remember being like, Natalie, that's against God and really being judgmental. And then I just kind of opened up and I got it. And it just blossomed from there, right? So getting away from Wicca, I did honestly, though, I don't know if you remember, but when we lived in Steamboat, I got, mom's still a churchgoer. And so I went back into church. Um, Again, we'd put our corporate lives in there and you do what you're supposed to do. And we'll talk about that in a second, but it just went back into church and then I was like confessing, not we're not Catholic, but I was doing my version of it. Oh, I did this and I got the nasty look about you did what and this kind of thing and I never really felt the embrace, right? Like, oh, it's okay. It's okay to explore. It's okay to go and learn about these other things. And that's all right. You find your path the way you find your path. And I think that was the start of turning off. Ultimately, though, we moved back to the Front Range. I went back, went to a really fun non-denominational church, uh,
Mhm.
rebaptized with my then husband and one of my stepkids went through the process as to why I have no clue, right? Because I'd already been baptized at birth, but it was all around well, now it's your choice and it's all of this. And then I look back at that now because that was what, trying to remember, put a year on it, 10, 15 years ago.
You're right.
Yeah. And I go, why did I do it? And I really felt like it's because I was supposed to. And I pushed away again. And that was it. Once the divorce was done and the I was moved to Montana and all these other things, I was like, oh, be me, be me. So, I mean, that's a very long, not very specific explanation. But how about you?
Yeah, so I think it covers kind of a lot of our growth, though, and growing up really in the church. And like Stephanie mentioned, we went back and visited our grandparents every year. And during those visits, I actually, for a couple of years, was a church counselor, a Christian church counselor,
Yeah.
at a camp, at a Christian camp. So I've read the Bible a couple of times, and we grew up in religious, and we grew up being the good girls and seeking those approvals and those pats on the back, like, you're doing the right thing, you're doing a good job. But I don't think that's horrible because I think our society as a whole, that's kind of how we've developed. It's the thing that is allowed.
Right.
The rest of it is so on the outskirts and people so don't understand it that it's just really a taboo subject right now. So it's strange though, because my grandma, who's super religious and a fantastic, fantastic woman,
Agreed.
she never cussed, never drank, never smoked. I mean, like, never said a bad word about anybody, and was like, we would read our daily devotionals when I was back there, and we would talk about God a lot.
Yep.
And I love her dearly. And as I've become a medium and really open to the psychic abilities that we all have, it's been very strange because she has been the one that is by my side every day. And it was only recently I was reading a book. I had read a book, and so then I got it on Audible, and I was hearing it in a different way. And this woman was also talking about how it was her grandma who first opened her up. And I thought, well, that's very strange. I've always just felt my grandma around me since she's passed,
Yeah.
and she's been gone for quite a long time. Um, and so I was like, huh. And so I was like, Grandma, are you with me? And I got the chills, and I was like, oh my gosh, like
You
she's
should have
been
been
part of
asking
this
all
journey.
along, right? Yeah,
I
it's
know, like 15, 20 years I could have been
chatting
tapping in
away
a
with
little bit.
grandma. And it's
And
so,
even in
yeah,
our practice over the last year and a half, 2 years that we've been working on being
yeah.
mediums and really developing listening skills, and the psychic abilities, I never once thought to to ask the woman that I've always felt like was around me. So anyway, I think that my very, very Christian grandmother is very on board with Stephanie and I doing what we do.
Oh, I
It's
totally agree. And it's
yeah.
funny you say that because you and I talked about this earlier this week. And just to kind of shift, we had mentioned last week in our podcast that we were going to talk about mindfulness this week. But this topic of religion and spirituality was one that, Natalie said, "Hey, you know what? This came to me." And then all of a sudden grandma was there again and I went, "Oh, that's hot. We gotta grab on and go with this." And so we changed it up and we'll get back to mindfulness next week. And continue from last week's. Anyway, I digress. So that brought us to the conversation about grandma because she's come to me in a lot of readings and stuff too. I've been reading with people, and all of a sudden, grandma's there. And I know it's a dictionary item for me to some degree, right? And dictionary items really about what it means to me so that I know how to relay that to the person that's sitting for me. But she's there in a different capacity too. And she smiles and she's not judging and she's not any of those things, all those things that I thought would be there, which is just proof pudding to me that as you pass and cross over, you're wide open, right? Everything is okay. Everything is all right. There is no more programming, no more um
No
religious,
more rules.
right? No rules, no religious doctrine that's around it that you're like, you must do this or you're gonna go to hell. And I told you this beforehand too. My partner had a great little snippet. And it's not true for everybody. I'm just gonna say that, but I thought it was a good anecdote. So, what's the difference between religion and spirituality?
What?
Right? She's like, okay, I'll play here. So, religion is for people that don't want to go to hell. Spirituality is about the people who've already been there. So, you kind of look at it that way and go, well, that's interesting because we've all been through our own version of that hell, right? Maybe ours
Mhm.
was fighting against the programming and against what we thought we had to do. Your good girl mentality, the we do the right thing. I mean, look at even our aunts and uncles would be like, oh, they'd tell our family, oh, your daughters are perfect. They're this. And we're like, if you
You
only
have no idea.
right? And mom and dad would even shake their head like, if you
Yeah, no,
only
not
did.
really.
And it's not like we have, right. And it's not like we ever played the Joneses or we ever did anything to make it
No, our
blatantly
parents
like,
were just really proud of us.
yeah, they
Yeah,
just celebrated us.
always.
Yeah. And so we didn't compete with anybody. We never had more than anybody. We never had anything like that. But for some reason, that was perceived. And that was all around the good girl mentality and do the right thing and be involved and do all of that. So,
Yeah, so all we're stating, all of this is like very real for us this week. Like this
yeah.
grandma thing happened this week, so that's what changed our trajectory.
Yes,
So
huge,
so
huge.
all good points. But you know what? It was really kind of relaxing because because like I mentioned, my grandma and grandpa and I, we had very, very close relationship, and I spent a lot of time with them. And my grandma being there and giving me the chills and like actually signaling the way I ask. Like when I'm talking to spirit guides, I ask they do certain things. When I'm talking to ancestors, I ask they do certain things. This is how I determine
Yeah.
who I'm speaking with for the sitter that I'm working with. But she gave me like the actual signals that I ask for. So
Oh,
it's not that she just showed up because I asked. It's like she knows my development, and a lot of fear of who I used to be kind of fell away this week.
yeah. I mean, it's acceptance. And isn't that what
Mhm.
everybody ultimately, we all don't, you say other people's opinions don't matter. I'm huge for saying other people's opinions are none of your business, but ultimately no one wants to live in a cave by themselves. Um,
Right.
we we don't want to go and explore this life on our own. I mean, there's
Yeah.
reasons that people partner up, reasons people find their communities, and we're going to talk a little bit about that too. But um, yeah, it's huge. And grandma, it's fun that grandma's been so integral for both of us, and that
It's
neither
crazy.
of us
So
knew it.
unexpected.
Yeah, and that neither of us knew it. And of all the people to be the one that was like right there, it's the most absolute religious Christian woman ever.
But ultimately, when you look at it, and that's like the topic today, she
Yeah,
was just spiritual.
she was.
She followed that dogma, that path, that
That was
specific,
her choice. Yep,
right.
that was
But
her
she was
thing.
very spiritual. So I guess it shouldn't surprise me. You know what?
No,
Nothing should surprise me anymore. And every day I am shocked.
shocked. I still
Are-
something still shocks the hell out of you every day. It's like,
Right?
what?
Right.
I know.
Okay. So let's get to some of the questions that I noted down. So
Okay.
did you have something else you want to add before I
No,
jump in?
no, no, no,
Okay, great.
no. Go ahead.
So for this podcast, I wrote a couple questions down just to
Yep,
kind of keep us on
me
track.
too.
And boy, are we already off the rails. So
That's,
here we go.
it's what we do.
So why do we think that there has been such a draw to the more spiritual movement and a decline in the more structured or organized religion? What are your thoughts on that?
It's a good question. I think people really seem to be getting away from the traditional, right? There's they're disconnected, and and it's from the dogma, the highly structured part of that organized religion, right? So it's got a stymieing feeling to it, I think, is a lot of it for people. And that's not all, right? Because the fact is, as we talk about religion, we also have to remind ourselves that Hinduism, Buddhism, Judaism, all of those things are all ultimately a religion. Some
Right.
just have a broader breadth of acceptance than others in terms of, so when we're talking about religion today, we're really focused on Christianity, right? Because Christianity is the one that, and I'm not even saying all Christians, because as we're just talking about our grandma, there's those true wonderful Christians that are going to accept you no matter what. They're not going to give you the "you're going to hell because you won't read the Bible" speech, and this kind of thing. So they are the true open-hearted, gracious, it's for God to decide. um but so many people have been hit by that, just feeling like they're just boxed in, right?
Yeah. Agreed. Agreed.
I mean, what
I
would you say?
I think you make a really good point. I think spirituality, like Stephanie and I, as we've already told you about kind of our process and where we came from and all of the different religions that we've kind of visited, we really did take what was we thought was meant for us and we left kind of the rest behind. And I think in
Hmm.
spirituality, that's the big difference, is it's so free flowing that you get to be more of an individual, but the pieces that might be missing are because of our societal structure around Christianity, that it's kind of you still kind of live in your shell, but it's a lot more free flowing to believe what is meant for you. And I think that's freeing.
I agree. I agree. And so let's follow up. Because this is like a question that I had about kind of that same topic, is do you think that inclusion or feeling excluded has had anything to do with that, and how rapid this is happening, right? That people are moving, and not all, but people are moving to a side. And I don't want to say that there's necessarily sides involved either, but people are deciding that they want to be involved in religion, or they want to be involved in the spirituality, and they're finding themselves. Um, do you think that has anything to do with inclusion or feeling excluded?
I do. And the reason I say that though is like religion, like the structure of religion itself is so exclusive. They are the owners of the truth. They are the owners of the reality. They have, you know, the the history, and they're going to make the decisions about how things should go and how we should ethically live and morally conduct ourselves. Where when you're looking at an inclusive perspective, spirituality, like you were saying, it is more inclusive.
Hmm.
You have more freedom to roam, to define who you are.
Yes,
But I can see, that's got to be one of the main tensions between the two.
agreed.
That's a really good point. Um, So when we're breaking it down, you get to the very specific topic. So what's the difference between religion and spirituality?
I mean, if I'm thinking about it personally, it's really around when I think of religion, I put organized in front of it, right? Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Organized religion versus spirituality. And both have their own books and they're not rules, but ethics and things that bind. The religion aspect of it is more hardcore for me. So the thing that makes it so amazing is that it is communal. And so people, when they go to church every Sunday, they could be horrible people the rest of the week. But for that 1 hour on Sunday, people are sharing with other people and people are, they feel that love. They feel involved. They feel like they're part of something bigger. Um, and they feel a part, there's rituals. Now they may
Yeah.
not call them rituals, but the fact is, when we do and we take the wine and we break bread and we do all these different things, there's rituals involved with that and there's reasonings for it and all of that. But it's the same thing on the spiritual side, right? With the rituals that we go through on this side. So whether you're burning incense, cleansing with sage, Palo Alto or Palo Santo, Palo Alto. Hi, California. Um,
Right.
Palo Santo. Whether you're, you know, crafting up some herbs, working with crystals, which, I keep my amethyst around with me during those times when I'm really vibrating because helps kind of keep me there. And it's been a very high vibration day. Um, but ultimately, one's following institutional written books, do this, do this, do this, and it's much more structured. And for people that need that structured, that tell me what to do so I can go do it, religion is the perfect balance in terms of Christianity. And I'm speaking from experience, right? Being Lutheran, being non-denominational, being engaged to a Catholic for a very short time, many decades ago, all those different things. The spiritual side of that is we still have the doctrine in terms of, yes, you know, um, your golden rules kind of principles across the board in a broad statement, right? And what you
Mhm.
do, harm none. Um, that connection to Earth, the different things that are happening there that really tie us to the universe. I think it's just a broader sense of community. The
Right.
only thing that, and I think it brings up the kind of the next question then I would ask about this, because it was kind of something I was thinking about with community too, is, the differences in what those communities look like. Because the religious side, it's very easy to see what that community looks like, right? Sunday church, potlucks, mass on Saturday or Friday, the very structured organizational religions that honestly, let's be honest, they follow a pagan calendar, people, just saying. But it does. And ultimately everybody's got them, right? Doesn't
Mhm.
matter which one you're doing, everybody's got some sort of religious, holy, sacred times, Sabbats, all of it. So what do you think it is that about the community piece for religion? Because I just really strayed on my own question. So around the religious, the community part of it is very obvious and straightforward from the religious perspective, because you know what to expect with community, church, all this, versus what's it like, or how do you get involved as a community in the spiritual sense?
So that's a great question. But I just want to highlight though, as like when I think about religion versus spirituality. So we talked about the restrictiveness of religion and
Hmm.
all of the things that go along with an organized religion and in spirituality, maybe less restrictive, maybe more, connected to different types of community. However, the one thing that reminds me, even when I was a little girl growing up in the church, um, that you talk to your pastor, your preacher, whomever that the leader of the church was for you, because
Hmm.
they talked to God. So if you had a question or something that you truly felt in your heart that you needed help with, you would
Right.
talk to your preacher, your pastor,
Right.
because religion really took that control of who is allowed to talk to God and who is honored in that way. and took that for one person. Whereas spirituality, it's broad based. Um,
Oh, I
you can
love
believe in a
that.
lot of different things and you can talk directly for yourself and you can
Yeah.
hear the answers too. Like
Yeah.
it's not meant for one person.
Right. Oh, I love that. And you're
Yeah.
right. You're absolutely right because it's not, you don't have to go talk to somebody else as the messenger. You are directly connected. Everyone is direct. I mean, everyone ultimately is directly connected, but you don't feel an obligation to go and talk to this person who's ordained or that there's no pecking order
Right.
to it. Yeah.
Right.
Ooh,
Well, and also in spirituality, we honor like our soul groups and our spirit guides
right.
and our ancestors, and we talk to them too. Like it's not just not that I don't honor God and Jesus. They do have
Right.
their place in my practice as well.
Mhm.
Um, but there's outside of that, I mean, they're not deities to me, but it's all kind of a level. I'm
Yeah.
getting more confusing as I speak. I know.
No, you're talking like me now. I'm rubbing off on you the wrong way. Sorry.
Damn it. Darn it. I don't know when we're gonna have to edit. Sorry. So
No,
now
we're
I've
leaving it
completely
at.
lost where I was with all of our
Oh,
questions
the
because like
community, right? The
we've talked
communities.
about different things.
I know that, which is great because that's what we're supposed to be doing. But talking about the community part of it, right?
Okay. Yeah.
So going to church and feeling like we're involved. And I think I kind of beat up
Mhm.
on that with the last question a little bit. But how can we incorporate that same feeling of belonging? Because there's a lot of people that are studying spirituality or figuring out where they are on the path and the journey. How do you how do we provide community to them? I mean, what's the best way for people to just kind of figure out where they belong in this? And some are just absolutely content being individual practitioners of whatever it might be and just
Right.
don't need it. I'm good. I'm golden right here. I got me and I got spirit or God or Allah or Buddha or whatever. But they've got their higher power. But what about those that really
Yeah.
feel like they're missing out?
Um, so this is going to be up to every individual, but I think both communities, like they develop their sense of self based on the things that they follow. So, when we're going through all of these different religions and we're talking about keep what's for you, leave what's behind,
Hmm.
there are certain ethical things that we may have liked in that religion, or how they honored the earth, or how they honor the sky, or how they honor their ancestors. So we pick those things up and those become part of our ethical culture. For
Right.
me, finding community has really been um, like being individual. And then, like you were talking about 20 or 30 years ago, you were like, what are you doing? And then you
Right.
became part of my community because
Yeah.
I was very much a solo person lost in my own world, trying to figure out how does Wicca work and how does this Wiccan read work and don't harm anybody. And
Right.
like, all of those things that I'm trying to remember. Then you became my community. And then as technology advanced, as I think we've talked about in a previous podcast, we started opening up to other communities, at least
Mhm.
being like on boards where we could get questions answered.
Right.
That's developed into I have multiple communities around me that follow different religious paths, and I'm not necessarily in that specific, like I'm not Wiccan. I'm not a specific person. I don't define myself like that.
Right.
But I do have circle friends, and I do circles with them because I believe in the Sabbats and celebrating them that way. Uh,
Yes.
so it's like I pick my community, and they are all okay with it because they're
Yeah.
spiritual people. No one's telling me that another community is wrong.
Right. And I think that's a really good way to put it. There's no one telling you that there's another community that's wrong. Even within Christianity,
Mhm.
you have your battles between the different, um, I'm not thinking of the word for it, but the different branches, basically, right? Whether it's Lutheran, Methodist, Catholic, ultimately they're all Christian groups, but yet, oh, you're a Catholic. Oh,
Their
you're
interpretation is the one that matters. Their interpretation is the only one that matters, and
right. And
that's
that's
not
not
how it should be.
I agree. I mean, not if you're truly being open and loving and really being involved about, and back to the exclusion and inclusion. If you're really being an inclusive person, you accept that person for who they are. If they want to worship Satan, well, not my path, but more power to you if it makes you happy. If, you want to sit and chant all day long, please do. Whatever
Right.
fills your soul. But I love the idea that the communities, because you're right, we're involved in a lot, and we've even got our own. I mean, living in different states, You've got different local people. I've got different local people um, that we connect with, and
Right.
and we have that. You're right. I think social media and the internet and some of that really changed the dynamic for that. People didn't feel like they were by themselves, alone, a castaway on an island, so to speak,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, well, and I think it's important to mention that in the communities, whether it's a religious um, specified communities about how you're going to behave, what your morals are
Yes.
going to be, how you're going to honor this day or that day or that day. I think that develops evenly in both communities because there
Oh,
are books on both sides. There's, like I mentioned, the Wiccan Reads or the Eightfold Path of Buddhism, or there's the Ten Commandments in the Bible.
yep.
Everybody has that structure of how you behave as a community. So I think that that's not lost really in either place. I think it can be found pretty solid on how we behave as society should behave.
Right. Right. They're almost, if you're being a decent human being, you should be following these principles. And,
Right.
and the Ten Commandments are a great example of that. They're good rules. They're just
Right.
10 good rules that everyone should really be looking at, right? Yeah, you shouldn't murder. Yeah, you probably shouldn't covet your neighbor's wife. I mean, those are things that it's like, well, if you're a decent human being, you would hope that those are things that you're kind of following toward anyway.
Right.
Um, but
It should be basic standards like,
right, right. But
but
the thing
some people aren't born into folks that teach them
is,
some of that stuff too. So it's
right,
good to
the
have a
golden
community that does.
It is exactly. That community is what embraces you and pulls you in and gives you the place to go, oh,
Right.
okay. You know, some people's moral compass is just a little bit different. But I guess I mean, talking about the commandments, there will be no other gods. Well, but who is that God, right? Um,
That's a good question right there.
yeah, because the fact is, I mean, uh, who is God in spirituality? And,
Right.
who's to say that the names that we assign things are assigned by humans being. They are not, you know, I have yet to have any higher being come down and say, no, you will call me this.
Right.
Ever,
Exactly.
ever. You will hear spirit. I hear spirit all the time. I hear things, but I have never heard that you will call me this. So whether
Never.
it's Buddha or Allah or God or I'm gonna I
Source or a higher spirit
source,
or
higher spirit, great spirit, all these, yes,
right.
exactly. Everyone's got their own thing. And for some, there are multiple deities, right? And that's their choice, is to have multiple deities. But ultimately, the one thing they all have in common is that higher power.
Right.
But yeah,
Right.
I don't know. What do you think?
No, I completely agree with you. And that higher power is actually what's going to connect all of us as one people. And ultimately, isn't that what every teaching is saying? Is being that connected person, working for the betterment of
Mm,
everybody in your society. I think at the base of religion and spirituality, that is the goal.
yeah, I agree. I agree. And I think what's really interesting too is if you think about it, people is shoving things down each other's throat. I can sit here all day long and look at you and say, okay, that sounds great. And I'll do that. If I don't believe it, it doesn't matter. I can look at
Right.
you all day long and nod my head and say, yep, okay, Nat, I'm going to do exactly what you told me to do. And you can be like, good girl, Stephanie, that's great. And then I'm like, I don't know what she's talking about. It doesn't resonate with me at all.
You could take a test on it, but it's not going to be how you're going to live.
Exactly. Anybody can pass the test, right? It's written down. I mean, it's what you do through college. You're like, okay, memorize, take test, delete. Memorize, take test, delete. I mean, that's just what you're doing all through. I mean, I was writing it down and we didn't have the delete option at the time, but at the
Right. White
same
out, corrective ink backing
right,
up.
white out when erasable pens came out, we were like, that's
Oh
fancy.
my
It
gosh, it
didn't
was
work
world
very good.
changing. That's good stuff.
Invisible ink, invisible ink. Oh God.
Or the corrective paper on the typewriter. Like when you had one of those cool typewriters that could
Oh
white
my
back.
gosh, right? That
Remember
was
that?
bomb. Yeah, it had whiteout on
Wow.
the tat. You could backspace to do over stuff. Okay.
Gosh, are we dating ourselves here or
Right.
what?
A typewriter, for those that don't know, is a device that doesn't plug in. You type on it and it goes paper into there and you actually type things out. And when you screwed up, you had to start over.
Well, but you know what? It's pretty awesome. The sound of a typewriter and that
Oh,
feeling of hit and return where you got to slam that
uh-huh.
side back.
Ding,
That was pretty, it felt pretty good.
ding,
All right. So,
ding.
okay. Woo! Squirrel running this way. I'm going to pull that right on back. So when we're talking about religion, ultimately it's what we believe. And
It
what we
is.
believe is what we're going to give power to, right?
Absolutely. And that's just it. I mean, that's what I'm saying, right? And what you're saying here too is if you don't believe in it, it's not going to resonate. If I'm doing a reading or coaching, development work with somebody, I have to find out what it is that's going to resonate with them because I could sit here and say, oh, these crystals or these herbs or, put salt around your property or, bury shungite in the corners or do these different things that I personally would do for myself in different situations. They're going to be like, well, that's nice. What's that supposed to do? And if they're not believing that that stone or that energy is going to do what they want it to do,
Hmm.
yeah, it's like you're pouring water into a lake. It's a cup of water into a lake. It's useless. What are you doing? What are you doing? So,
That's so absolutely true. When I was clearing a haunting out on property, someone who was pretty terrified of what was going on, and
mhm,
we were talking about the different stones and like the salt around the property, and I was going to sage because I always carry sage with me.
right.
And there's so apparently so much trendiness around it now that people just are like, yeah, whatever, you're gonna sage the property. And I thought, okay, well, I said, let's not use sage then. Let's talk about some other options. So we talked, about the Palo Santo, about candles, about, different ways we could bring smoke into the home that would help dissipate the energy. And once they started talking with me, it became better, but they never went back to sage. So I mean, we ended up using Palo Santo,
Uh-huh.
but they had to like come to my understanding of why we do it. And I'm not just walking in with sage or,
Right. Right. I
that's not
mean,
the cure all. It's the intent behind it. It's
exactly.
what I put into that smoke and what I expect to happen with my interaction.
Exactly. If you're going to burn something that's going to intentionally make your house smell like you've smoked pot all day long, then I would want intention behind that, right? I'm not going to just burn sage because somebody said it works. It's like, no, are you clearing the corners or do you have I know you and I have a mantra that we or a saying that we use as we go through and clear space. Are they, but do they believe it?
Right. And
And if
it has to be unique to each individual. And the more hauntings I do or
absolutely.
the more clearings I do, the more I'm really connecting with the individual
Yeah.
and with the spirits on the property to make sure I find that balance so that everybody is, we're good with going home. Everybody understands the assignment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Basically, it's finding, I think you said this before, it's finding power in your own beliefs, right? It's not religion versus spirituality. It's not religion and spirituality. It's not religion or spirituality. It's about that interconnectedness of our community and what our role is, our community, the world in general, right? Which is our community, and what's our role in it? I mean,
Yep.
that's really what it boils down to.
And it really does. So since it boiled down to that, we're going to cut it off. So with
Oh,
that, we'll wrap up this session from high heels to happy feels. Thank you for joining us today. I'm
we,
Natalie.
I'm Stephanie. And we're with Immersive Spirit. We're so grateful that you were here. Don't forget to subscribe on our YouTube channel and follow, if you're not a member of immersivespirit.com, get on out there, become a member. We got lots going on and we're anxious to share it with you. Have a great day, everybody.